The lead's being recorded live from San Diego at Heart Rhythm Sessions. One of the late breakers that came out just now, the left bundle branch area pacing versus BIV pacing for CRT in patients with EFs of less than 50%. This is going to be simultaneously published in Heart Rhythm. It's part of the I-class investigation, and the first author is Ramez Marcos. I have two speakers today. The first is Hakeem Ayinde at Fredericksburg, Virginia, and Dr. Prashant Bhave at Wake Health. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
So another win for conduction system pacing. Prashant, why is this study needed? It's another observational study.
Well, Mike, this is just another sort of brick in the wall of trying to build the case for left bundle area pacing over CRT. And I think that this is needed because the indications for CRT are heterogeneous. So you have your classic CRT indications, then you have your block HF indications. And the question is, with all the variety of options of what to do, what should we choose for any given patient? And we're waiting for the left versus left randomized clinical trial that's going to look at standard CRT versus left bundle area pacing in patients who are classically CRT candidates, so left bundle branch block, very low EF. But this observational study basically was designed to mash together low EF patients with mid-range low EF patients and see whether or not left bundle area pacing would perform well against traditional CS pacing. It's important because it does take a heterogeneous group of patients, but it's looking for endpoint of mortality and heart failure. And I think that this is going to help guide what physicians do until we have RCT data available to move us forward. So in that case, in that sense, it's another brick in the wall.
Hakeem, how did they mash all these patients together? What was their methodology? Why was it different than the other observational studies?
So what they did this time around was, when you look at the previous I-class studies, they had differences in patients that received left bundle pacing versus patients that received the BIV pacing. So now they took this group of patients, the classic CRT patients and the block HF patients. So any patients who had a CRT indication or who they thought would need RV pacing more than 20 to 40% of the time, they took all these patients and actually did a propensity match score, propensity matching this time around to show that, okay, now if we can at least get some form of matching, and maybe it's going to be a fair contest comparing BIV and left bundle pacing. And these patients, they made sure that, now what's interesting here was it was like an on-treatment analysis where they made sure that, okay, if you had left bundle pacing, you did have you had criteria for left bundle branch pacing. And if you had BIV pacing, you did have successful BIV pacing. So with propensity match in one-to-one, they were able to get a total of 1,560 patients, and they followed them for outcomes which were a composite of all-cause mortality and first heart failure hospitalization for primary outcome, and secondary outcome was either you have all-cause mortality or the heart failure hospitalization. And then they had some subgroup analysis at the end, and a competing risk analysis for heart failure with mortality being competing risk for heart failure hospitalization.
It was nice to see that propensity matching when they had that first big group. There was a lot of baseline differences, and then to see them all just perfectly equal, apples to apples, I think is a strength of this otherwise observational study. Prashant, tell us the tale of the tape. I mean, what did it show?
Well, as you said, Mike, the propensity matching was successful because we had an otherwise fairly lopsided set of groups. But the benefit of having a large cohort like this is the propensity matching can really even things out.
Right.
And so they were able to be successful with that. And what they found was that to sort of take the smaller pieces first, left bundle area pacing was safe. It was successful by the criteria that they laid out. And I think it's important to think about the criteria that they laid out are not going to be perfectly sensitive for actual conduction system pacing. But it is a consistent metric that they use in terms of terminal R prime and one other marker. So I think that at least we're talking about the same thing. And what they found then was that the pace QRS was about 10 milliseconds narrower in the left bundle area pacing group. The complications were less, lead revisions relatively similar, fluoroscopy time, similar between the two. And then the big punchline was that the composite of heart failure hospitalizations and mortality was less in the left bundle area pacing group versus the traditional CRT. So that's the punchline. Now, I think that when you look at the sub-analysis between mortality and heart failure hospitalization, mortality was not significantly different between the two, even though there was a trend toward favoring left bundle area pacing.
It was
However,
mostly heart failure.
Heart failure hospitalization is what drove the endpoint. And when you look at where the curves separate, it's within a year. So they had a good, robust follow-up time period, but they separated about 6 months, and then they stayed separated in terms of that heart failure hospitalization endpoint. And so I think that, the tail of the tape is that left bundle area pacing can put another notch in their win column.
Yeah.
But we have to sort of temper our final conclusions, understanding that this is an observational cohort where the operator ultimately decided what they were going to do.
Can you expand a little bit on how you mentioned they had some actual criteria for left bundle branch area pacing? And we always worry about people just driving these leads in the septum and calling it conduction system pacing when it's not. What exactly did they hold the patients to? What criteria did they subject them to?
Yeah, so that what they needed was a terminal R prime in V1 in combination with V1, V6 or LVAC criteria.
Okay.
To sort of, and that was the surrogate. They weren't recording conduction system potentials, and they certainly weren't putting a catheter retroaortic to look at the LV septum. And I think that, careful studies have shown that, we're not always capturing the left bundle system or ramifications when we're doing this, even though we meet the metrics of V1, V6 or LVAT or terminal V1. The good news is that recently published work looking at lot CRT versus CRT showed a benefit of lot CRT, and it didn't matter whether the left bundle area lead was deep septal or truly left bundle area pacing, the patient still derived benefit. So maybe it's a much ado about nothing in terms of these criteria.
Right, much ado about nothing. Hakeem, what does all of this mean for you? I mean, take it home, tell us how we can use this in practice.
So I think the first question is why do we think the left bundle area pacing did better? Well, if we look at the data, they showed that the patients with the left bundle area pacing had narrower QRS. So when they implanted them in wide QRS patients, they narrowed the QRS better. And this appeared to translate to also better improvements in left ventricular ejection fraction. So I think mechanistically we're seeing better electrical synchrony in the ventricles. And this is probably why we're getting a lot of reduction in our heart failure hospitalization. Now, what does this mean in my practice? Well, let's look at the guidelines. We have, so the class 1 guideline for CRT is, you have your patients with low ejection fraction, EF less than 35%, left bundle branch block, QRS more than 150 milliseconds, NYHA 2 to 4. That's your class 1 for BIV. Now, the guidelines give a bailout. If you're going with left bundle for bailout, that's your class 2B. So the question is, and then you have your block HF patients needing RV pacing, EF mid-range, that's class 2A for both BIV and left bundle. So the question is, does this change the guidelines in terms of class 1 BIV and 2B for the same indication? Well, I don't think based on our, what we've done with strength of evidence and how we change guidelines, I don't think, based on this being a retrospective study.
Like, we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. So I don't think it's practice changing. It's definitely hypothesis generating. And we, with the left versus left, we may be able to finally get the answers.
Dr. Bhave, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is CRT dead?
In my mind, CRT not dead yet. It's hanging on. In our lab, certainly for my practice, a classic CRT patient with a wide left bundle and a low EF and heart failure is going to get an attempt at a good CS lead placement first. Now, the question becomes, if it's a pacemaker, I'm also going to try for a lot CRT result. If it's a defibrillator, we don't have left bundle area defibrillating leads widely available yet, but that may be the go-to in these patients. So I think that there's a couple more steps before the CS lead is dead, but certainly left bundle area pacing is gaining prominence and gaining traction in all of our practices.
Hakeem, what are you doing in your lab? Are you doing CRT as a bailout to left bundle, or left bundle as a bailout to CRT?
So I'm actually doing the exact opposite as Prashant.
Okay.
I do my left bundle and bail out to to Bive.
Okay.
And it's interesting that we all agree that for the block HF patients, patients that have narrow QRS, like we just talked about, long PR, narrow QRS, you think they're gonna pace. There's room for, we probably all agree that maybe CSP might be, you wanna lead with that. But when we're with the left bundle, class 1, I think if you're getting good results either way, stick with what you think it's all about the outcome. If you think you're doing great with it, do it.
We've been talking about left bundle branch area pacing versus CRT in all comers less than 50% EF. It's simultaneously published in Heart Rhythm, and as we anxiously await the randomized trial, let me thank Dr. Prashant Bhave, Dr. Hakeem Ayinde. For HRS Digital Education, I'm Mike Lloyd.